Slade, Diego, and Cole set out from their meeting place, a beat-up old gas station on the outskirts of Black Canyon City. It was a gorgeous morning to head to Wickenburg to look at the property Slade had found. The lack of humidity had the sky a brilliant blue. There wasn't a breath of wind to stir the dirt. They'd take Interstate 17 south 12 miles to the New River Road exit. For 10 miles, they'd head southwest until they made the second right-hand turn onto Highway 74. That would take them past Lake Pleasant towards Wickenburg. That would be their longest stretch for 32 miles. The three men knew the route like the back of their hands. They had traveled there many times before. Desert Rattlers owned one bar there. They were ready to open a second one, only this one would be private, members only. Slade had been careful to keep multiple places for them to congregate. Patterns were too predictable. Paranoia was another thing that had kept him out of the eyes of the law. That was why the whole situation with Diego and Hank had him on guard. They bought coffee to enjoy while they talked. Slade laid out the details of the property so the other two men were aware of his ideas before they saw the property. They could use the driving time to think about it. They were 5 miles south of Black Canyon City when a car pulled up beside them. All three riders turned their heads as both windows rolled down and two young women leaned out to yell suggestions. The three men grinned, but it was only Cole and Slade who shook their heads no. The fact that Diego didn't was noted. Normally it wouldn't bother Slade. This whole deal with Hank and who might be involved had him on high alert. For all he knew, Diego didn't deviate from his normal behavior, and there was nothing to read into his lack of expression. As they neared the exit for New River Road, Slade had a feeling he needed to back away from Cole. The arranged meeting in the downtown office, the comment about old school, all of it was a man who had been around. Cole had one foot in two worlds. The gang, the public. Diego had both feet firmly in one world, Slade's world. It brought a level of comfort to Slade, though he knew he had no answers. Nothing had been clarified in his mind but this single point. Until he had solid proof, he had to be careful with both men, holding them to a certain level of distrust. That was the problem of picking a second in charge. The strengths and weaknesses came out slowly, too slowly. Slade had invested so much time in Diego. He was deeply impressed. Slade knew he had his own set of weaknesses. Old school. That was Slade. Old school was fading into oblivion. Not with Diego, though. He was as old school as they came, Slade realized. Slade had been given his first dirt bike by age 3. He was taken out to the desert and let loose. There were wrecks, broken bones, bumps and bruises, but while his dad kept an eye on him, he was forced to learn by his mistakes. It was the same with Diego, he realized. He remembered when that scrawny little kid had tried to outride him. Target practice was another lesson they learned under his dad's watchful eye. His dad went one step further and taught both of them how to use their fists. Diego was practically his younger brother. Slade's dad had raised both of them. For as hard as his dad was, there were two things Slade was not allowed to do. The first was to disrespect his dad or any male older than him. He called them sir or got slapped. It only took a couple times to ingrain that lesson into him. The second was he could not swear. His dad told him if he was mad enough to swear, he needed to hide it. Telltale signs gave the enemy too much information. Hide the fury, then strike. Looking back, Slade realized just how many times that lesson had given him the element of surprise and the upper hand. He also realized right then that he had never heard Diego swear, not once. Dad waited till he was 13 before he got his first beer. Another lesson he had to learn the hard way was what too much booze did to his ability to fight and drive. Drinking was fine. Overindulging could be the difference between getting leveled in a fight or being the one standing. The one thing they were taught that Slade wished they weren't was the way they viewed women. They weren't worth the paper they were printed on, his dad had said many times. Slade strongly disagreed, thanks to Diana. She had shown the value women were. He knew his dad considered that a weakness of Slade's. They took the gravel road out to the location. The three men went through the buildings the realtor had unlocked, then left. They didn't need a step-by-step commentary from someone who was there to sell. Slade had eyes. He also had carpenter experience, another skill his dad had taught him. He had built his own house. Sure, it had taken him a year, but it was done right. The small building that would be a bar was bigger than the one they had outside of New River and in much better shape. They would need to add a second restroom. There was only one. Slade could do that in a weekend. They walked out to the shed. There was no electricity in it, which was a mark against it. Still, for what they'd use it for, they could put up portable lights if they needed it. Boxes of guns didn't need a lot of light. Reinforce the door and install security would get it ready to use. Slade glanced at Cole and Diego. I like it. I vote for it. Cole nodded. Diego just gave a thumbs up. Not once did Diego get his phone out to text or take a call. The lack of a tell of what he was thinking was equally impressive and frustrating. They went to the bar they owned in Wickenburg to find a beer with food and to wait an hour until the realtor could meet with them. The three men discussed the property along with changes they'd need to make. Diego loved it. He was on board, and his ideas were good. Slade and Cole were none the wiser to Diego's involvement, or lack of it, when it came to Hank. He had never let anything slip. As they drove back towards New River right at 6, Slade's thoughts were jumbled. As he downshifted to speed around a beat-up old Ford pickup, he knew the trust in Diego had dimmed. Until he had solid proof Diego was not aware of Hank, Slade couldn't trust him like he thought he could. He put his hand out to let the other two know they had room to pass. Diego went first, then Cole. As they pulled up to the bar outside of New River, Slade had one thing decided. He would contact Diana. He knew she was in Anthem. The tracking device she either knew about or ignored or didn't know about had kept him informed of her whereabouts. With a cold beer in front of him, he was checking out the tracker software to see she stood in the doorway. Slade. Cole spoke. Yeah. Look. Slade raised his head to glance at Cole, who pointed to the doorway. Slade turned his head. He already knew who was there. Her hair had darkened through the years to a deep auburn color. It was cut in bangs and rested at the base of her neck. Layers added depth to the already thick hair he loved to run his fingers through. Her eyes were accented to more of a turquoise color than green, thanks to the turtleneck that showed she had taken good care of herself through the years. Her jeans were tight. The boots her jeans were tucked into looked new. She had covered her freckles. The men in the room with Slade went silent. Tension was so thick it could have been cut with a knife. This was either about to turn very ugly or very good. No one breathed as Slade put his phone down and stood up.